So hey guys, welcome to Tree Bark. This is your little Nook in the Woods furry podcast here, and I'm super stoked today to actually have one of uh these furry producers that I've been following for quite some time and quite a fan of, and his name is Paradox. So
Hi.
hey Paradox, would you like to do a little introduction
Uh,
or anything? Say a little tidbit about yourself.
so I'm Paradox. I'm a red wolf. Been in the fandom about a little over a decade. And basically, I'm a nerd. I like to simplify it as that, but I do various production stuff at conventions. I staff a few cons, and I run a podcast network called XBN, which has also been going for about a decade. And we produce various podcasts, but most of them are oriented toward furries, even if they're not necessarily about furry stuff.
Right on. Okay. And actually, like, I guess just to kick it off, yeah, I've been following Furcast as soon as I got into the fandom because I had no other outlet or anywhere to really like learn about the subculture. So that was wonderful.
Yeah,
Um,
it seems like it's a good, like, especially when furries are young, they tend to grasp on to whatever they can find on the internet, and I'm really happy that I can be a part of providing for that because I remember when I was like 15, 16, and
yes.
like just desiring so intensely, like, oh, I wish I could go to a con or I wish I could go to wherever, and that's like, so it feels good to know that I'm like contributing back to that kind of,
Yeah.
not that all of my content's really made for kids though, but I'm still adding to that world of like people who are discovering it and stuff like that.
Yeah, so I guess that kind of like leads us right into some like icebreakers. So from was it that did you get into the fandom and then actually become interested in production, or was production sort of something that you've always been into since you were young? How did that kind of meld?
Yeah, so I've always been my whole life kind of back and forth between like electronics and IT and production, a little bit of mix of those kind of. So for my actual profession, I am an IT like system administrator. I worked
Mm,
for a data center as a Linux system in for a while. Now I work for an IT company. But my whole life, I've kind of always blended those things together a little bit. I've always felt like there's no one place that I exactly belong. But furry kind of came along separate from that. But it helped that, especially at the time, nowadays social media makes it so easy. But back in the day, I feel
like,
like I'm like
are
old when I say that.
are you talking about
Back in the
like
day,
early
yeah, but
2000s?
yeah, like early 2000s, the only way to find the fandom really was to know how. Like you had to know how to use IRC, you had to know
Yeah,
how to use Furry Muck, and so the kinds of people you discovered generally were very nerdy, resourceful
they're
kind of
very
people.
techy. Yeah, very techy and affluent in that kind of space. So it was really hard. I kind of compare it to like the Harry Potter like wizarding world. Like if you
Yeah.
don't know the routes or the avenues, you're not gonna find many people. But that's definitely not the case these days.
Well, and a random thought with Harry Potter too, where like one thing I've noticed in that is that some people are like they've grown up with it their whole life and it's just like nothing new and it's nothing special. And then there's like Harry, that main character, who's like, you can do that?
Yeah.
He's got like that kind of like perspective on just discovering it for the first time. And I think that's actually why Harry Potter relates to a lot of people. And I think it's sort of similar with
The
furry,
new
maybe not with the
furries.
magic stuff, but just with just like uncovering this whole world that exists.
Hmm.
It's
And they
kind of.
they just come from every walk of life. I have so many friends that are from like military to working in backgrounds, yeah, in IT to just regular college students. You never
Yeah.
really know who's gonna pop out from what corner. So I mean, with that being said, how I mean, I would say yeah, you're quite the like furry veteran. How long have you been in the fandom?
So I think I started discovering it around 2007. I don't know. Maybe it was like 2008. And initially, um, so I was fascinated by like fantasy creatures, so like
Hmm.
dragons and centaurs, especially centaurs. And I'm completely public about that. Like centaurs, love them.
Legs.
Uh, they, I would Google them all the time, and I would try to find them, especially when I got my first computer, Windows XP. Hell yeah.
Oh god, yeah.
Um, I was so excited. But when I first started browsing, I kept trying to find these art sites, and you'd find DeviantArt, you'd find Elfwood. Remember
Hmm.
Elfwood, God. Um, and eventually I found E621, and then it went all downhill from there.
Yeah, I think that's kind of a common story. Like a lot of people don't want to admit, but it's like, oh, there was a bit of the loot. Yeah, the porn, basically the porn got got
Yeah.
linked to it. But so did FNT or did Furcast actually start shortly after then? That you wanted, was that kind of the seed? Like, did you have to be in the fandom to want to start the podcast?
So when I was 15, so we're talking 2010, or 2009, 2010. Um, I knew I wanted to do a podcast, and I was interested in it for the technology. So I started Friday Night Tech,
Oh, okay.
FNT, and the idea was it would be a tech podcast, and that lasted maybe a couple weeks, and then I just started playing music because I really like music. And then that kind of took over, and now we renamed the show Friday Night Tracks. And half of me wants to move on and kind of start it as a new show, and then another part of me is like, no, this is a story of me growing up, kind of like I can't get rid of it. I can't,
Hmm.
so it's like that one weird thread that kind of ties the whole thing together, going all the way back I mean, you can literally go, I don't recommend this, by the way, but you can go on their website and you can listen to the episodes when I was 15, which I really hate. Not because
Why
it's
is that?
cringy, which it is cringy, but because there's probably like things that I said that I know for a fact I would not stand behind today, whether it's a political opinion or
Just
something.
Yeah, just growing up, maturing, and then just changing your opinions over time.
Yeah. But I haven't gotten rid of it just because, well, first of all, RSS feeds, which are the technology behind how podcast works,
Hmm.
you can only have so many episodes in them. So most like podcast apps that you get on your phone, you can't even go back that far. So I just haven't bothered to get rid of them
Oh, then how
on the
could?
website.
Oh, so people couldn't even reach them anyway if they wanted to today.
They can if they know what they're doing. If you know how to read URLs, but I probably
Okay.
shouldn't give people any
Yeah,
hints.
you don't want to promote that, I guess, but it's there, and if you try hard enough,
Hmm.
you'll find them. Okay, so over that time and just like really getting to know people, one eye-opening experience for me was, yeah, we come from all walks of life, and like I kind of compare it to like being in like normie space. I would have not met like the amount of people that I know today now through the fandom than if I were to just be on my own with like my old high school and college buddies. So like with that social aspect, how would you say that that's like opened you up too?
Um, I think that's probably one of the best things about the fan. I mean, there's a lot of things about furry culture that I like.
Yeah, I'd love to
Whether
unpack it. Yes.
yeah, I love. I mean, we can talk about some of it later, but if we're gonna talk about social, it blows my mind. And I say this to my parents every once in a while, and it blows their minds too. Every time, once in a while, when I visit them,
Mm-hmm.
that it's like I could go at this point. I've been here for a decade. I could go to any country in Europe, any country in North America, any country in Oceania, and I would have a couch to sleep on. Like I would have people to visit, people to hang out
Mm-hmm.
with, places to go, friends there who know friends who know friends who know friends, and that blows my mind to think about that. It's like it's just kind of opened up the world in this weird way. I went from high
Quite.
school where I had like one or two friends and I had like maybe two Steam friends back in the Counter-Strike days to now it's like I can't even go anywhere without knowing people, which I'm not complaining, but it's
Mm.
just kind of it's almost
Is
overwhelming
it?
like how
Yeah.
many connections that fandom gives you.
Do you feel like you've ever gotten like burnt out from that, or like has it only been like more fuel to the fire and your passion?
That's a good question. A
That
lot
like.
of people do get overwhelmed.
Mm-hmm.
And I think some of that is the fandom. Some of it is also social media. Twitter and Facebook and stuff, those types of websites, they can be
Yeah.
very overwhelming. You get a lot of the FOMO, fear of missing out. You get a lot of that stuff. For me, I have worked very hard to try to control that. I'm very careful about who I follow. I'm very careful using notification management features on my phone.
Mm-hmm.
I try really hard personally to make my life something that I'm not going to get burnt out from, or I'm not going to get sick of. That
And
doesn't mean
that's.
people don't piss me off, right?
I'm sure there's
But
no
I
shortage.
just mean, yeah, it's just some people, they get into Twitter and they get really into it really hard, and then all of a sudden they get burned out and they're like, I can't do this anymore, you know.
Yeah.
Um,
That is quite the
so yeah.
case, because I would say, like, just from my experience in the fandom, something that it opened up me towards was like the more artistic and creative side of myself. And then you can find out that so many other people go down this avenue and they become creators, and then they become like sort of entrepreneurs, and then now they're engaging with like 10, 20, 30, and then hundreds of people all at once. And I kind of found myself in that space too, and I'm like, okay, how do I manage this? And then you got to cut down sometimes, or you got to expose yourself. It's just like a wild, I have like this up and down roller coaster with the fandom, and it's like a love-hate relationship, but I will always like be here. It's been
Yeah,
pretty
same.
special.
It's like I can't change what I'm emotionally attracted to. You
Yes.
know, like that's I've always said, you know, maybe a couple decades from now, yeah, maybe I wouldn't go to cons as much anymore, or you know, Nuka from Fur Science, which are that's a group of people that studies furry. They like do the surveys at cons and stuff. They've looked a lot at the age drop off in the fandom, and
Oh,
they do see a continual trend of around, I think it was like between 30 and 35. It's a steep drop. But there are some people who do remain, and if they do remain, they're pretty much in it forever. And they started doing more research on that to try to figure out why that is.
oh, what if,
And what they discovered is a lot of people join the fandom for the social reason, but all of a sudden you kind of realize that you're with your friends, you live with your friends are all around you, and furry doesn't really need to be in the room anymore. You know,
that's
like,
just been an accepted kind of like day-to-day norm now.
yeah, and so that is why they predict that there's somewhat of a drop off, is because like it fulfilled the need that it had in your life socially. Um,
Oh, that's really interesting.
and I don't think that applies to everybody, right? I've always hoped that like, you know, decades from now, I would still be like staffing and helping out,
Yes.
even if it's at a basic level. I want to. This culture has done so much for me. I want to be able to make sure I give back to it.
Definitely. And do you do I guess kind of transitioning now, like do you do also what you do in terms of production and whatnot while staffing at cons? What do you handle over there in that space?
So at cons, typically AV department, and typically it's lately for whatever reason it's been video. So I'm secondary director of video at Anthrocon. I'm director of video at FE. I'm stream tech at MFF, and I don't do much at MCFC, although a bunch of my friends there and I. It's one of those things where I never walked in any of those cons saying I'm gonna be staff,
Oh,
and I never formally signed up or asked to be staff.
it's just kind
It's
of
one of
happened.
those, yeah, like it's basically this. You go in and you're like, oh, you know, these guys are my friends. I'm gonna help them out, you know, and you help them wrap up a couple cables, and you hang out with them, and then the
Mm.
next year you're like, hey, yeah, you know, you guys need help here. I'll come down and I'll help you, and then you're helping, and then all of a sudden, you know, the director of the department hands you a staff badge and goes, oh, by the way, here's your badge, and you're like, what? And they're like, yeah, here's your badge, and you're like, oh, shit.
I didn't
Guess this
sign
is,
up for
you know,
this.
yeah. I've always said to people, and this is career advice too,
Mm.
be careful at what you're good at,
Because people will
because
pick up
it
on
will
that.
become your problem. Yeah.
Yeah. That's definitely the case. Okay, so that's really cool. So you would handle like shots and whatnot of like the dance competitions, or really a lot of the, I guess what does that cover really in terms of like video or um the audio sector for AV for cons? I've only been to one though, I might want to add, so I am definitely new to the scene. I've been
Ooh,
to
which con?
BLFC
BLSC.
2019.
Okay. I've
Yes.
heard good things. I have
So
not been.
yeah, so coming from Hawaii, on the West Coast, it's one of the most convenient ones to go to.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense, especially for the flights in. Yeah.
Yes.
Um, so for me, as I say, general nerdiness. A lot of it is I just love being in that environment. I love the gear. I love all of the people there. I love just being there. So,
Yeah.
in all honesty, it's a little bit of everything. It's helping out with this, and oh, you know, hey, John needs you to hold this so he can strap this thing up, and you know, this guy needs help over here. When it comes to the event itself, when it's going,
Mm-hmm.
generally it's lately it's been video related. So for Anthrocon, for instance, I was taking care of the stream encodings, like the live stream, the video feed that went to the hotel. We had to take care of that. Simon worked on that especially.
Mm.
I worked with Freeze Badger a lot. He's the director of video at AC. We were calibrating cameras. I was doing what's called painting. So in a
Mm.
television studio, there is a person, and literally all they do is they sit and they have all of the cameras on monitors, and they use what's called scopes, which you have the camera on one screen and you have another thing on another screen that shows you like kind of the brightness levels,
Okay.
and you're basically making sure the cameras are all matched. So when you're cutting from one camera to another, you want to make sure that the color looks the same. You want to make sure that
You're
um,
calibrating.
it's, that you're calibrating them, yeah. And then generally they'll need adjustments as the lighting rig moves and as, different fursuiters come up on stage. You have to kind of make sure that everything looks right. So I do a little bit of that.
Wow. So
The audio for the stream as well, they do a separate mix for that now. So there's a guy at a mixing board that does the mix for the room that you're in with the big speaker system.
Yeah.
And then there's another guy backstage with another mixer, and they do the whole mix again, but just for the recording, the live stream,
Oh,
the
wow.
video version that goes on YouTube later. Yeah. Because it's generally accepted that the way you mix for a room is different than the way you mix for like a broadcast.
Okay. So every
We haven't gotten to
environment.
the point of. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. No. Yeah. So like every environment has its own tune and tweaking that you do.
Yeah. And sometimes like in the industry, you'd have like a broadcast truck that would take care of a lot of that. And we've actually joked about doing that at MFF and everything. But I think we're
Furry
really
news.
just into impressing ourselves. We love the idea of going overboard for the sake of going overboard.
I love it.
And producing, what looks like a multi-million-dollar show out of, maybe a tenth of that.
Yeah.
We have so much fun with kind of pushing ourselves because we're nerds over it. Like we sit on Discord for hours, talking to each other about how it's done in the real world.
And
How do the professionals do it? How does NBC do it? How does BBC do it?
Yeah, and that's really the beautiful thing because you find that even while you guys are staffing or helping out the community in that way, you're also like bonding over this specific thing that you guys are all interested in. And that's like what I really love because any part of the like production or the art is all a facet of what you guys gravitate towards.
Yeah, and it's sort of become a family at this point. I feel like it's a lot of the same people at a lot of the different cons until you really jump. I mean, obviously, if you go to NFC or Eurofurence, it's a different crew.
Whole nother world. Yeah.
And not all the cons use the same crew, but like a lot of, especially the northeastern cons, so MFF, FE, AC, they're all almost the same crew. And so we all know each other, we all know our jobs, we all know what we're good at, and it's just great to be able to show up. And the other thing that's really amazing about it is, so for Anthrocon this year, we had a jib. So we had a giant camera crane jib at Anthrocon this year, which is like there's a person on one side, there's a bunch of weights on one side, and then there's a giant pole, and then the camera, so it can kind of like swing around the crowd and everything.
Yeah, I've seen that for like movie production before.
Yeah, and we had that for the video at Anthrocon this year, and it was owned by Freeze Badger's company. So Freeze Badger rented it to the con. And that's the other cool thing. Sometimes not everybody. Sometimes you get paid to do these cons, which is cool. I don't personally get paid. I'm just there to have fun. But what was cool is I got to try it, and I got to run it for some of the events.
Oh wow.
And I'm sitting there going, what environment am I going to get to be with my friends, having fun, playing with like millions of dollars worth of gear, and if I fuck up, it's not that big of a deal, right? Like,
and you get
if you're
experience.
yeah, because it's like if you were a camera crane operator for Hollywood and you fuck up, that's a bit you're gonna have a boss yell at you.
You're out of there.
Whereas in this environment, my boss is a badger, and the other boss is a husky, and they're both giving me hugs. So it's like, it's just really cool that like we're in this sort of serious professional environment, but we're also like a bunch of gay furries that are all like,
yeah.
Yay, and having fun, and
it's only promoting, having fun.
Yeah. That's what I love about it.
Yeah, so the yeah, I just keep getting blown away every time I see just a group of people come to do something that they love. It's very much like a passion project a lot of the time, and you don't ever really know what's gonna come of it. You just put a whole lot of people in one space and just see what happens.
Yeah, it feels really good to be a part of something where everybody cares.
Yes,
Um,
I couldn't agree more.
every everybody wants it to be better. We have our arguments, but it's for the most part, everybody wants to be there.
If
You know,
you
it's
had to
not for money.
if you had to give any like small quippets of advice to people who are kind of hesitant about like, oh, I've had they're in the fandom now and they're mostly online, but they want to say, hey, you know what, I want to go to a local meet or I want to go to a con for the first time, what could you say to them?
So the first thing, um, furries generally, at least I've found, depends on your personality, but I have found them personally to be inclusive. Especially at smaller events, I felt like I could sit in the lobby and somebody would just sit next to me and start talking to me. But that doesn't mean it's going to work for everybody in every scenario. And I have seen people go to cons and get overwhelmed and feel
Mm-hmm.
like they're not included or feel like, well, it looked like everybody was having fun, but I didn't know anyone, and I didn't feel like I fit in.
Yeah, I've had
My
a
advice,
Oh, sorry.
go ahead.
Sorry. No, I will say
No,
real
you're
quick
okay.
that yeah, for my first con just this past year, the first from day 0 to day 1 that we started the con, we got our badges and everything and went around and did a quick sweep. I literally cried that evening in bed in my hotel room because of how like wonderful the space was and how happy everyone was there. That was really nice, and I had my boyfriend who comforted me and stuff. So that yeah, so don't worry about getting overwhelmed. You probably will be.
Well, and I think my advice for someone getting into that is make sure you do have your friends. Make sure, I would assume if you're getting into the fandom, you're probably starting to get some online friends. You're in chat rooms or you're playing games with people on Steam or whatever it is. Um, Try to go to an event where you do have those friends. And that doesn't mean be clingy necessarily. That
Mhm.
doesn't mean that that's all you can experience, but it's
Mhm.
useful to have a balance of sometime walking around alone by yourself, sometime in the dealer's den buying things, sometime where you're going out to eat with your friends. And it's obviously not perfect. You don't need to schedule yourself. It's just um, you be a little careful if you're jumping in completely alone by yourself at a con. Don't let yourself get too overwhelmed and turned off. And also,
Mhm.
don't let yourself get turned off by local meets. Because I've also seen people where they go to a local meet and they're like, everybody was nice, but I don't really feel like I fit in with them. And I'm going to tell you right now, I've been a furry for 10 years. I still don't fit in with my local furries. Um,
You
some of them are really, really nice, really cool people. Sometimes I see them at cons and it's like, hey, what's up? But it's like, don't let that be a deterrent.
Yeah, it's
Whatever type of person you are, whatever you're interested in, there are people like you. There are people who are social at the same level that you are, whether you're introverted, extroverted, you will find the right people.
definitely. And like yeah, by no means let that first impression be a hindrance to like the rest of your experience in the fandom or dissuade you from it. I generally do feel like as long as you're open, you're forward thinking, you will definitely find people that think exactly like you. And that's what's kept me in the fandom for this long too, over the past 3 4 years now.
Yeah.
um
And I mean, it's also overwhelming when if it all does work out and you do have a really good time, when you realize you have to leave and go back home to back
oh
to your normal
god.
life, post-con depression, everything. And
Oh.
that can be curbed over time, right? Like I live with furries at this point, so it's like for me when a con ends, I'm saying to most of those people, "Hey, I'll see you next week," or "Hey, I'm going to see you next month at the next event." And all of a sudden you kind of get this lifestyle going. At least that's the way it works for me. Some people
No,
it's not a
yeah.
lifestyle for them, but um
It could
that's another part of it.
it could be something that yeah, people keep professionally. I know that some people are teachers or actually in a case where professionally they have to be a certain way, and that's actually really difficult. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, but by and large though, for the for your time, your personal time, what you choose to do with it is up to you. And if you do want to have like genuinely good connections, like at a con, after I'm done even meeting 2 or 3 new people, I could later hop online and then we'll Discord and actually play games together. And then bam, I've got like 2 new great friends.
Yeah, yeah. And it's always cool just the kinds of people that you meet and people, yeah, like you said, people from all walks of life.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's kind of amazing how, you meet one person and they're into this, and then you meet another person and they're like, "Oh yeah, I'm the CEO of this company." And you're like, "What?" There's always these like stunning, interesting people that you meet that you just not expect. I love it.
Yeah, I especially find that there are a lot of entrepreneurial types. Like you'll find, well, I think one good example is just the dealer's den. For me, every time, even for like my local conventions here that are mostly anime cons, I'll go to the dealer's den and I'll bring my little notebook, and then I've seen things that that people do that I want to actually mimic, or at least, improve upon. I want to take my art skills to the level that they're at, sell your own art, really just be your own kind of, I guess, CEO or your own entrepreneur. So it's always wonderful to see. I guess what I guess I'm trying to think now. So for your interests, you're into production, AV, you're into IT and troubleshooting. What else do you feel like you've picked up from the fandom or just over time? Like, I kind of like, this is funny because like this is also a podcast, but it's also my first time talking with you, Paradox. So I'm also kind of trying to get to know you. So it's kind of all over the place. But yeah, I definitely
we definitely gotta hang out more.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I haven't been to MFF, but I understand it that I think, is that your annual con?
I go to roughly 4 cons a year. Depending.
Oh wow.
At least that's what I try to do. Yeah, I mean, keep in mind, I feel that you're in Hawaii, right?
Yes, I am based in the middle of the ocean.
So, okay, first of all, looks gorgeous there. I'm envious of your weather, but I do feel bad for the separation there because
oh, yeah,
I can just drive to MFF. Now, granted, it's an 8-hour drive. But it's like I try to do cons very cheaply. So another benefit of staffing is that you can go to the con for free, effectively. Well, to an extent. I mean, you're paying for food.
Yeah.
Potentially hotel. Some cons will comp you a room. Other cons don't. Depends on the event. And it depends on the venue and everything like that they're in. But generally, you can go to cons pretty cheap if you live in the right region. And so a con for me is like maybe a couple $100 at the most.
Oh wow.
So I'm able to kind of bring that down. And then the other thing too is my production company XBN, some cons will rent gear from me. So like for their live streams they rent some equipment.
Oh wow.
So that also helps a little bit. I'm not gonna say that like covers the cost entirely, but it's like there's these little things that you can do to try to make it a little more affordable.
Yes,
and especially if you're just starting out at cons, like don't room by yourself, like room with some friends, and then it's way cheaper.
Yeah, you don't want to get caught paying for an entire room. Like that's so hard. Definitely, yeah. Find a nice solid group of local friends that you could go with. That's what I do here from Hawaii. I have a solid couple of friends from Maui, and then just every year we'll go book a flight, book a room, and it's all set.
I feel bad. I'm flying to New Zealand this year. I'm flying right over top of you, and I'm not gonna be able to stop by and say hello.
Well, I've also never really been to the East Coast. I mostly stick to the West, but if that's a possibility, I would love to visit.
Yeah, definitely. Anytime. You're welcome. And that's
yeah, have you on record.
That's another. I guess that's probably the other like fandom thing that I think stands out to me as being like,
what's that?
What is my lifestyle with it? It's the social. It's the like ability to get friends and relationships and lovers, and
it's what, playing off of that, what's so hard as an adult that I've realized. I mean, I'm 25. I don't know a whole lot, but growing up though, it's so much harder getting friends as adults. Like as you get older, people have their own business, they have their own families. time is really precious. And I noticed like when you're in school, you at least have school and it's a social environment that you can all get along with over. In the adult space, well, we have the furry fandom, and that's what I really respect and appreciate.
Yeah, I mean, NPR, which is National Public Radio here in the U.S., they're like a public
Yes.
broadcaster. They had an article about how masculinity is like hurting men's ability
What?
to get friends and stuff like that. And it was this article about how like and obviously what they're commenting on is American Western culture a little bit, but also American culture, right? Obviously this doesn't apply everywhere. But we're
Yeah.
talking about mainstream, your average 20, 30, 40-year-old
It,
male
in the
um
U.S.
in the US. They were saying that a lot of statistics are showing like they're having trouble finding friends. They're having trouble being intimate with their friends because, maybe they have a girlfriend or something. But there's like that kind of disconnect because,
Mm.
you got to be bros and you got to hang out and everything.
Oh
And
God.
it's fascinating to me because I'm reading that article and of course, you just have to laugh a little bit because it's like, wow, like furries just kind of don't have this issue because we're just,
Yeah,
at
like
least generally, way more open to each other, like intimately and friendship
yes.
wise and even physically. And the article was saying like men need to learn how to like be able to touch each other. And when I say touch, I mean like just literally
Like hold
touch each other
hands or
physically at all, like
oh
hold hands or like hug or like chill on the couch together. And it was saying men need to like learn more that like it's okay to be emotional and it's okay to be honest and like it's okay to cry
yes.
and like all of this stuff. And I'm
It's
like,
like
okay, yes, but it took this like, psychology developmental person to write all this. And I'm just like,
for
uh-huh.
something you've been doing
Yeah.
for the past decade already.
Yeah.
To be honest, yeah.
Um But that's one thing that like furries kind of are getting right. And the
Yes.
other thing I think that furries are way ahead of their time on is so jumping into sci-fi a little bit.
No problem. Go as far as you like.
I think maybe not the end game,
Hmm.
but the next stage of humanity to me is this whole idea of chosen identity versus given identity, right?
Chosen identity.
The difference between Facebook, where you're your real name, your real face, your real identity, your real job, and Reddit, where you're just this user and it's anonymous and you have a
Mm-hmm.
screen name. And but taking that even further, right? Not just um, trans rights, which is not just necessarily chosen identity. I
Oh,
wouldn't call it chosen, but the idea of having an identity on top of the one that the average person would perceive you as,
so
and then going further to say that that identity is actually the correct identity.
but so what you're saying is like, well, that actually exists now that I think of that in a digital space. I mean, what is your FA account? What is your user profile? All these things
It-
that you ascribe to in your bio.
yeah, exactly. And there are always those people who like to take it to the extreme and make fun of it. The people who are like, I identify as an attack helicopter. but
I'm a Troy Gender
but when you
Pyrofox.
right. But at the end of the day, though,
Yes.
when you do present yourself with this icon, with this character, with this personality, it sort of is actually the truer version of yourself. And it actually becomes more real than the you in regular life. And when you take that further and you push it into sci-fi, take
Mm-hmm.
for instance a movie like The Matrix.
Okay.
Originally, the Matrix movie, obviously, Matrix movie is about many things, but one of the things that they originally wanted to make it about was that whole idea of like you're sort of this other identity in the Matrix versus out of the Matrix, but in some ways that's a truer you because that's who you lived as.
In in a world of like infinite possibilities, you can choose exactly what you want, the way you want it, and everything.
Exactly.
Um.
And then you've got Neo in the Matrix saying, well, are any of those memories of my childhood real? And
Mm-hmm.
they were saying, well, maybe they are, maybe they aren't. It's your kind of virtual identity. And I feel like as humanity progresses, we're going to be pushing that boundary more and more, where you are identified more by your chosen family, your chosen identity, your chosen gender, your chosen species, whatever it is. And I don't know if it's that things are going to get more virtual. You know, I'm not going to say that VR is the future. It's
Really
not as
close.
simple. It's not as simple as that, though. I think it's
Mm.
just that as a culture, I feel like we're kind of starting to extrapolate more another layer above our average, what you would judge just by looking at a person.
Yeah,
And
because you can't judge them on a surface level. You don't know what's going on in the consciousness or anything like that.
and I feel like furries get that already. Like I feel like we have already figured that out.
Yeah, and
And
I think you might get some backlash and some people saying like, no, it's more escapism or something like that. That you want to live in the fantasy world or something that's not based in reality. But again, I think how you highlight how no, your memories are based on the experiences that you want to have and that are enjoyable that you can like reflect on. That's you. And I agree with
yeah.
that so much.
Well, and I think it's a little bit of everything, right? Some of it is, um, the body that people look at me that I'm in,
Mm-hmm.
that they see and judge is incorrect. And no, actually, this other identity is the more valid one. There's that. There's characters, right? People who just have lots of characters and lots of
Yes.
stories that they wish they could live. And then there's the idea of it being flexible, that you can have multiple usernames on the internet. You can play multiple personas, and it's like we're kind of moving as we move from generation to generation. You look at your parents, and your parents might say to you, "Well, how do you know that that person is real that you're talking to on the internet?"
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like when we were younger, I might say, "Well, I have this evidence, and they did this, and I have this photo of them, and like I know that they know this friend." Whereas now, I would say, "Why does it matter?" Because I've spent 5 years talking to them, and they're a fox. So they're a fox.
Yeah,
Like it doesn't, to me, who cares? That is who they are. That's who they want to be. That's who they present themselves as. And I feel like that's kind of the long term, like where we're going. And I feel like that's something that furries are really to get. We've figured that out, and a lot of people who are not furries don't quite grasp that idea of separating the identities yet.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's the way that like in this what I would consider like to begin with niche community, slowly going more towards the mainstream or at least being more open about it, that I see is that they're always pioneering like as a collective, like we're always pushing the boundary of just being as honest and open and expressive as I've ever seen any community. That's not really based around one singular thing. So you can see it really branch off in all these different avenues, and I think you're right. That's definitely the path that makes the most sense to me. Yeah.
And it's just one of those like, um, it's one of those weird like ahead of its time kind of things. I feel like, um, and just and some of it is because we were forced into it, right? Like I'm not going to say that Telegram is like a bad thing, but it's the fact that we're all on Telegram and the fact that we use stickers, for instance. Um, that's like a huge part of our culture now.
Just from the way
Being
we
able to communicate
communicate.
in that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
And some of it is, was forced upon us, because of just other platforms and stuff. But furries tend to gravitate towards a platform where they can be themselves rather than be who they're being forced to be.
Oh, okay. I
And
see
I,
where you're coming from this. Yeah. And a lot of the time, like this will lead me to believe like a lot of my friends from the South, they've been, I'm not gonna say what religion or whatever, but they've thought one way or the other about this and the way that they should go throughout their lives, and then they discover us, and then they're like, oh, that's totally not the case, and they'll just be themselves, and you'll find that they'll be the most honest, open, and positive people, at least from
yeah.
that I've met. Yeah.
And some of it might not be entirely furry either. Some of it could be maybe the generation you and I are both in, where like, I feel like for our
More
generation, the
millennial
idea
type.
of yeah, millennials. I feel like being on Facebook, being friends with your coworkers, being friends with your aunt and your uncle and your mom and your dad, like it's just there's this kind of jarring. It seems a little alien to us, compared to like what we've experienced with the world and the internet, and I feel like I feel like the days of dating your high school girlfriend and then getting married
Oh
are
wow.
over.
Yeah, that seems so
Y-
foreign to me now.
It seems so foreign, right? But
But
that's
you
where we're
can,
at. Where
yeah, and I have so many friends too. Like one of my friends, he's already like online dating with one of his other boyfriends in Sweden. Like he's not from Sweden, he's from Hawaii too. So you could be from any part of the world. Just like how
I
you
guess a way
mentioned.
to, yeah, you could sort of simplify it down to like, maybe people just like aren't defined by their demographic anymore. Like rather than being defined by here's where you live, here's the school you go to, here's your income level, here's your,
Oh wow.
your race or whatever. Rather than that, you're being defined by what you seek, your
Yeah,
interests, your
your
passions, your
your
yeah.
geography does not like bound you in any like capacity these days because information can be communicated for free basically.
That is a
That's
downside of the fandom though.
what is that?
No, geography. I
What do you
mean,
mean?
I feel like the core negative aspect of being a furry
Okay.
is all of your friends are far away.
Oh, I guess yeah. I mean, honestly, I mean to begin with, well, even when you discover the fandom, it's heavily online based, and even though that there are furcons with, I would say tens of thousands of people there that attend there, depending on the con that you go to, I think it's most prevalently online based. I don't know the stats or if Nuka can summarize that, but yeah, I don't think that being close wouldn't help.
It's a little bit of both. I mean, there's being surrounded by good people that you belong with is always going to help you as a person.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but even as somebody who lives with furries and goes to tons of furry cons, I still feel that core yearning in my heart for the fact that so many people that I love and care about are so far away all the
Oh,
time. And if I was rich, people always ask that question, like, what would you do if you won the lottery and got millions of dollars? Um,
money was no
well,
object.
if money was no object, well, the first thing I would do is hire a financial advisor. Um,
Gotta maintain
let's
that
be honest, some
income.
people are like, oh, I'd never go to space, I'd buy a boat. No, I would hire a financial advisor.
Secure myself.
But
Yeah, smart.
yeah, yeah. But the second thing I would do, is travel a fuck ton
Oh yes. Oh
and
god.
just visit people constantly, and try to make them feel like I exist in their life and that I'm around them and that I can support them. And
Yeah,
that's what I would want to do for everybody that I know.
yeah. The people you talk online with and share like intimate moments with, yeah, you would want to share in real life, and that's beautiful. Yeah, it's honestly beautifully put.
Oh, thank
I
you.
yeah, I couldn't agree more. A lot of the things that I never realized while getting into the fandom is like you don't know what to expect, and I never saw myself being here a little like Pacific Islander. I never really expanded my horizons. It was very hard for me to realize like, hey, there are other people out here and they do really cool stuff and you should be a part of it. And yeah, that's honestly like what sometimes keeps me up at night. That's what I really do cherish and appreciate.
Yeah,
Um,
and it forces you to be a little more like worldly, where like
yes, way more
you
traveled, way more cultural. Yes.
yeah, and I mean I'm not gonna say I'm that good at it, because I don't really I like to think I don't have much of an ego, so I can't really say that I'm good at it, but especially as an American,
Oh, I'm so
um
sorry.
American thanks. You're right though. It's as an American, uh, you can very easily get trapped into American culture and lifestyle because everything you need is here and
Yep.
everything you could ever want like and there's always that feeling whereas I have tried so hard to get rid of that. I don't want to be thought of that way. I want to and like anytime um I learn of something that is a more universal way of doing things or a more international way of doing things, I will immediately latch onto it and try to do it. Because it's like, um, I don't hate this place where I'm at. I think I live a pretty good life, but I don't want to. I don't want it to be my identity. And I feel like a lot of furries kind of go through that where you really start to question where you live, where you're from, the
Mm-hmm.
city you live in, how other people live, because not only is all of it in your face constantly on the internet, but you're traveling a lot more. And you really get to see that, yeah, the place that I grew up with my parents that they said was so great is actually not that great,
Yeah,
you know.
and you don't have to
Um,
ascribe to that and let that like define you over your life. Yeah.
which is stressful.
It it can be a lot to manage. It
You know,
sounds like simple on the surface, but yeah, it is definitely a lot to think about. And I try to be at least aware of those things. I think being self-aware is very helpful.
yeah, and as long as it's reasonable. I don't think I live in the, greatest city in the world. I live near Niagara Falls.
Oh,
But it's
seventh wonder of the
enough. I
world.
got good internet, I got good food, I got a job. So it's like at a certain point you have to give up because it's like sometimes it seems like, oh wow, they have it so good over there. Like I'm like, oh God, all the German furs that hang out. I wish I could be there. And then it's like, and then sometimes you visit and you realize they have the same goddamn problems.
Yeah.
Their friends are all far away and they're like, oh fuck, I gotta go to work. And it's like the same, you know, not to say that everything's equal, but as long as you don't live truly completely isolated from any friends at all, which there are people who do,
Mm-hmm.
um, it's as long as you live in a semi-major city, uh, I think you're okay. Um,
Yeah. Like I mean,
shouldn't worry too much.
yeah, people experience like the harsh or the suffering of life like anybody else for the most part. But yeah, surround yourself with good people and you will go places literally. You will go to better
Yeah,
places.
yeah, you will. You're gonna be on flights to places you didn't know existed a year ago.
Oh god. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So how was where was it that you said you just recently traveled to?
Um,
New Zealand? Was it?
define recent. Yeah. I was
Oh,
in New Zealand 2 years ago, and I'm going back this year, and I'm also going to Furry, which is on the Gold Coast of Australia.
Furry is a con that they have there.
Yes.
Oh, okay, right on. And
Yeah.
that's like
If there's any
another.
Australia left, by the way.
Oh no, yeah,
Well, while we're doing this interview, Australia's burning. So
yeah. If
I
you
don't know,
want
but
to
if there's an
timestamp it.
Australia left in a couple months, we'll see.
Okay. Oh, I
That
wish
should
you
be fun.
well.
Yeah.
And I think like I have this Google Doc here like discreetly, and it's been covering a couple of the questions, but you've basically blown through all of them. And I think
Oh,
what
that's
is
good.
we've been in for a good 40-ish minutes.
Yeah.
So I just like to very humbly thank you so much for making time, Paradox. I really appreciate talking to you, and I would love to some more. And
Yeah.
definitely I would love to visit sometime. Likewise, you always have an open invitation here at Mikasa.
Yeah. Same to you.
So
You always have an open invitation here.
oh, thank you.
Anytime you're around, we got a studio. We got a bunch of people here, so come get snugs
Oh, hell yeah.
and eat all our shitty food. I don't know, whatever there is to do here.
I can bring some of my shitty food too.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. There you go.
So thank you again, Paradox. This has been Tree Bark, and I am just so happy that we could have you here. And I wish you well on your travels, your future travels, and I say hello to all the fuzzbutts that you snug.